This car really doesn't need an introduction. This is the Mazda MX-5. It's a sign of affordability, driving fun, a daily driver sports car, and for some, a midlife crisis. So I wanted to see what all the fuss was about because I've actually never driven one of these. I've driven cars like the Abarth 124 Spider, which is a cousin to this car. I've driven Mustangs, I've driven Porsches, all great driving cars, but I've never driven the one that's meant to be the baseline, the one that everyone goes, if you don't know what sports car to get and you want something that's reliable, affordable, it's cheap to run, and also is incredibly fun to drive, then you have to get an MX-5. So then Mazda kindly lent me a Mazda MX-5, which is of course a manual, which is very important, to see what the fuss is about and see why these are so in demand by so many driving enthusiasts. But as a little hint as to what I think of this car, I think I found my personal next car. Now this is of course the ND, and it's the latest generation of that. It's the 2022 model, has a new motor and a couple of slight revisions. And I want to walk you around the exterior features, the interior features, and most importantly, take this for a drive to let you know what this is like to take out on some actual fun roads to drive on, rather than just running around on a test drive loop that you probably experience on a Saturday. And so with all that said, my name's Cameron, this is Product Review Cars, let's get into it. Now pricing for the 2022 Mazda MX-5 starts at a smidge over $40,000, and to be honest, I think that's a decent price against competitors like the Subaru BRZ and the Ford Mustang. But it's only a good price if you're putting driving fun as your #1 priority for your car. If you're looking for practicality, features, all those sort of other things that people consider when buying a brand new car, this is lacking in those departments. But if you're cross-shopping against other sports cars at this price point, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised with what this car comes with. Now let's talk about the exterior features. First of all, I want to talk about the design. This is the second best looking MX-5 ever made. The first one was obviously the NA with its little cute pop-up headlights, but this is far more aggressive. I love the lines in the hood. I love the sculpted look of this car. I love the angry headlights down below, but a little smile, so you know it's not completely serious. And of course this thing looks best topless because the side profile is distinctly MX-5, and I think this looks stunning. And of course in this spec here with this grey paint and black wheels, I think this is the best spec brand new ND Mazda MX-5 I've seen. And then yes, it's worth noting this does have automatic wipers, and then you do have some gloss black plastic around the windows surround and here on the side mirrors. Now the 2022 Mazda MX-5 comes with 17-inch wheels, which are black, and they really help this design pop. I like them a lot, and they're wrapped in a Bridgestone Potenza tire. Now to operate the roof of an MX-5, it's actually really easy. There's two latches, one on the windshield, one at the back, and so when the roof's folded down like this, it starts to sprinkle. You go ahead, rip that tab there, and you've got yourself your roof up and over. That's easy as that, and you just latch it on the inside. And then when you get a bit of sun like we have now, you go ahead and pull that latch underneath the windshield and throw the roof back and lock it in place. It's as easy as that, and you can really take advantage of weather that might be a bit rainy or a bit sunny, and you can go ahead and enjoy it whenever you want. Now at the back of the MX-5, you have LED taillights, you have your badges, and of course you have this aerial that doesn't retract. Instead, you can just hit it like that, or you can unscrew it if you really don't like it. And then down below you have your real unfinished tailpipe. So for a lot of people complaining about fake tailpipes, this is the car for you, because there they are in all their glory. There's two of them, and this is what they sound like. Now you're probably wondering, can I make the MX-5 my only car? Well, let me explain what sort of boot space you have. Well, to open the boot, which is here, to like a trunk design, you have two options. You can use the key, which you have to have the car off and able to use, or you have to hop out and find this little button, get nice and up close and personal, and there you go. And so once you open this, you've got yourself 130 liters of boot space. Now look, it's not a massive amount, but it is really quite usable. Mazda have made sure to sculpt out as much space as they can from the inside to give you as much space as you possibly can get for a car of this size. Now this is probably good for two adults to go away with some weekend duffel bags. You're gonna have to throw those hard shell cases because they're not fitting in there unless it's a carry-on size. In here I fitted all my camera gears, you can see splashed around the back. And then what's funny is that your actual instruction manual is here at the back too, because there's no glove box. So this is where that lives. And unfortunately there's no spare in this car, so you do have a tire repair kit. But yeah, let's see how useful that would be in case of an emergency. However, practicality is not limited to the boot. So we don't have a glove box on the inside, but we have a couple of places to store some smaller items. We have a place under the screen to store your phone. We also have a compartment underneath my elbow, which you can store items like a cable or parking tickets or even coins. And then you have a lockable compartment between the shoulders of the driver and the passenger. And that's pretty decent. So you can put some bigger valuables in there and lock that up if you need to. Now, talking about the interior of the MX-5, is it a $40,000 interior? I think it's pretty up to scratch, although I would have liked to seen a slight better build quality with the doors. There's just a bit of movement here when I pull the door handle, but that's really about it. The quality of materials in here isn't going to feel extremely high. There is a lot of plastic in here, but that's a good thing because that means it's easy to look after, especially if it's being exposed to the sun like this constantly when you have the roof down. Now, in front of me, I have a simple driver's display setup. You have a giant rev counter and you have a actual analog speedometer, and you have a little screen off to the left which shows you a bunch of different information around your car's trip info and even some warning symbols and stuff like that. So that little screen is quite useful. Steering wheel, perfectly sized. I love a round steering wheel and it feels great in the hands. Seating position, you don't really want to be bigger than me, to be honest. I'd say at 5'11", at 78 kilos, I would be pushing towards the taller end for people who can sit in here. I would say if you're like 6'1", 6'2", and you're a bit more slender, you'll be able to have a good time in here, but anything above that, this will become a tight car. And even for myself, this is a tight car, especially with this mound that's in the driver's section here. That's just taking up a bit of my leg room. And I do feel like the pedals are a little offset to the right, so it just feels like a small sports car. But that's what this car is all about. It is about emulating those smaller sports cars of the past, and it's really quite an awesome experience once you can get comfortable. You have some adjustments here on the side seat. These are manual, and you have a floor-mounted accelerator, which is quite good, so you can feel nice and comfortable. And then especially for the 2022 models, you get telescopic adjustment for your steering wheel. This was actually quite a big deal when it came to the MX-5, so that's quite useful to get nice and comfortable. So I've got a good driving position. Talking about good driving position, I have my handbrake right here, very easy to use and operate, no problems there. And it's stitched in a nice bit of leather material there, which is quite nice to look at and also engage with. And then we have our really cool 6-speed shifter. This is apparently one of the lightest 6-speed shifters implemented in any road car, and it really feels quite special. The only other cars that have a shifted feel like this I've tested it include cars like the Porsche Cayman and the Toyota GR Yaris. It's a very rewarding gear shift experience, and it just looks so great. It's small in the hand, and I think the design looks fantastic in here too. Over in the middle, we do have a touch screen, which is also controlled by some controls down the middle. It's very easy to use. Mazda infotainments are one of the best to use, although the touch screen when I'm using Apple CarPlay seems to be intermittent. So that's a very bizarre little quirk that I've found. So I found myself really using the dial down below, but when convenient, you can use it as a touch screen. But what I like the most is that it's really easy to turn off and on at night because it is quite bright, and rather than adjusting the brightness, you can just go ahead and turn the screen off and really focus on driving. And then in the middle, we have these cup holders, which actually are removable, which is quite interesting and quite fun to use. If you don't want cup holders, you can just throw them somewhere else in the car, but they just tuck in neatly in between the driver and the passenger. So this car isn't all about the flashy features or showing you off a bunch of different options and features. Rather, this is all about just providing the bare necessities plus a little more, and also the driving experience. So I think it's time we head out and see what this car is all about. So when you buy an MX-5, you expect it to be relatively fuel efficient, which it sort of is. For a sports car, I've been achieving around mid 9 litres per 100 Ks. You can get up to 10 litres per 100 Ks, but then you can bring that down quite a lot once you've had your fun and you know how to drive this with a bit more fuel efficiency in mind. So look, it is an okay car on fuel. And then come the safety features. This thing's pretty well kitted out. It has a reversing camera, has rear parking sensors, and it even has stuff like blind spot monitoring and lane keep warnings, and all that stuff can be turned on and off through the screen or as a simple button near your knee, which I really appreciate. And also you can toggle traction control on and off without having to hold it down and go through a weird bunch of sequences. So look, this may look like a bare bones car on the outside, but it does have a few useful and safe features, especially the active collision avoidance, which is a camera up in the windshield, and it will look to see if there's an obstacle in front of you, and it will go ahead and actually stop the car in case of an emergency. So that's pretty useful. And now I'm driving with with the top down, because that's just something that the MX-5 does really well, is top down driving, and it's just so much fun. It just really feels like I'm driving how cars really were intended to be, and to be honest, it's a lot of fun. I didn't think I was a big convertible fan until I stepped into an MX-5. This is just great. This is like a roadster feel, a speedster type feel almost, and it's a reason why brands like Porsche, Lamborghini, Bugatti, all these big brands still do topless versions of their cars, because there's just something special about removing the top and hearing more of the exhaust, the intake, the road, the world around you. It's so much more fun. But while I'm speaking to you, I have the windows up, so it just creates a bit more of a cabin. But then when I'm not talking to you, I like to have the windows down. It really gives you an awesome experience, and it definitely feels almost speedster-like, and the only thing stopping it looking like a speedster is this giant windshield in front of me, which is good for bugs. Now under the bonnet, we have a 2-litre naturally aspirated 4-cylinder, which is producing 135 kilowatts and 205 Newton meters of torque. And you're probably like, Cameron, that's not enough power for me. And I can tell you that that's plenty of power to move this car. This car only weighs 1,050 kilos, around there. And I can tell you that this is a very good formula, because the father of the McLaren F1, Gordon Murray, said that his favorite type of cars are ones that are lightweight, naturally aspirated, that are manual, and also have a ride that's comfortable but also very, very capable. And I think that the MX-5 ticks all those boxes. So if there's one person I'm going to listen to say that this formula is quite a good one, it would be Gordon Murray. Now what's good about this power plant is that it has a pretty good low range. There's no dead spots in this rev range. It acts exactly how you'd hope a naturally aspirated engine would. It's just a whole lot smaller than obviously something like a V8 or a flat 6. This thing is quite good at pulling all the way through the rev range, and it means it's great in traffic, great for day-to-day driving and all the boring stuff, but then it really comes alive on roads like this. So as we downshift a little bit through this 6-speed manual transmission, we have rear-wheel drive. It's just so much fun, and I didn't think I was going to have this much fun in the MX-5 until I stepped behind the wheel, and it's just, it really makes me think that the BRZ and 86 are good, but they're not as great as the MX-5. There's a reason why this is still a favorite amongst many, and it's been going so strong for so many years. It's just a brilliant setup, and you feel everything through the steering wheel in all the right ways, and the suspension setup here is pretty good. But I can see why there's a more hardcore version for track days. But I think the Roadster is very appropriate for roads like this. I'm having a ton of fun navigating these twisties, and I really love the fact I'm sitting further back, and also the fact that the weight of this car is largely towards the middle, with the engine being pushed really behind the front wheel, so it's almost front mid-engine. And then this rear-wheel drive driving experience means that when you put power down, you sort of just start to shoot in the direction you want to go, and it's just so much better driving rear-wheel drive than it is front-wheel drive. But I just think this has a better flow to it through the transmission, through the gearbox, through the revs than the BRZ and 86. Those are still very good cars, but there's a reason why the Mazda MX-5 has been so praised over so many years. I really love this roadster type experience, and it gives you that old school feel without having to go and worry about all the problems of buying an old school car. Now this 6-speed is just the best thing to shift. I love using this. It's a lot of fun, and you never get bored of using it. And it's so buttery smooth that not a lot of people are going to complain about you using it. And that's what's really quite brilliant about it. It's not as jerky as some other manuals. So it really is quite a benchmark for what great manuals should be. Now I love how you can tell exactly where your wheels are. You're in a smaller car, so there's no overhangs or weird things like that. And you can go through and really enjoy this car. Now maybe a louder exhaust could be more enjoyable, but I sort of like the subtlety of this one. You don't really need to turn heads because the design of this car already does, I can tell you that. A lot of people do look at this car, but I do like the subtleties of the burbles, and it does have a nice bass to it. It is quite a good little bit of noise to have in the back, and when you get on it, for example, like we bring it down a couple of gears, and it is a good sound. It's a good naturally aspirated sound, and it's a 4-cylinder, so it's only going to sound as good as a 4-cylinder can get. But overall, the MX-5 just delivers in every way for a fun driving experience, and
I really think that how Jeremy Clarkson says you should own an Alfa Romeo to call yourself a car enthusiast, I think you should own a Mazda MX-5 because it's just something you should benchmark all your sports cars against, because it's just back to the basics and it does everything so well, so right, and all for a really good price. Now obviously it's not all perfect, you know, there's like things like it feels a little bit underpowered at times, and maybe you don't like the fact that you're gonna have to sacrifice a lot of practicality to own this thing if it's your only car, but I sort of scrap all those things for the amount of smiles I get from this thing. It is just so fun to use and engage, and I can't really imagine having more fun in another car for the same price that this is asking. And especially the fact that this is the base model, and this is meant to be the stripped out worst one that you can buy against the more premium versions of the MX-5. This is almost the one to get. Unless you really want some more niceties in the GT model, including heated seats, leather, all that sort of stuff, I really think that this is great up until the point you think you're going to be going to the track more often, where something like the GT RS with the upgrades that it has makes a little bit more sense. But I'll have to test that to make sure that's entirely true.
Okay, so if I've had to move on from my Abarth 500, I found my next car. I used to think that car was the Subaru BRZ or the upcoming Toyota 86, but after driving this, those are second to this driving experience. The MX-5 is no longer underpowered with this new 2-liter power plant, and it is just a delight to drive. It's a breath of fresh air in a sea of overweight sports cars. With a distinct lack of turbos and superchargers, this thing just feels raw. It feels like a modern interpretation of what driving a little sports car would be like back in the 60s. And I sort of feel like Carroll Shelby from Ford versus Ferrari hooning around in this thing. The real highlights are the balance of a lightweight construction, a motor that likes to rev a bit more than the improved flat 4 in the BRZ and 86, the comfortable ride that's also very capable in this roadster model, and also to the driving position. I really like how this thing comes together. And then not to mention the cherry on top, which is that 6-speed manual, which is just so fun to engage with, and actually is a car that I look forward to driving rather than dreading in traffic when you have a manual only option. I really like driving this thing at every opportunity I can get. And I can tell you, this is as big as a surprise to maybe some of you as it is to me, because I really was sold on a new BRZ or 86, but this MX-5 has completely shifted my vision, and I would say this is the best sports car you can get for under $50,000. And all I can say is that if you have been tempted by an MX-5 and haven't driven one yet, it's a dangerous game, because you become fixated on owning one of these once you understand what these are all about. Now, thank you so much for watching. My name's Cameron. I'm going to be testing the more hardcore version of the MX-5, the GT RS, which is very exciting. And if you don't want to miss out on that, make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss out on that and other sports car reviews here at Product Review Cars. Now, that out of the way, I'll see you in the next one.